Hello and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. This podcast seeks to explore the minds of those who not only understand or experience empathy, but of those who wish to take action, build and practice empathetic behavior through conscious decision and responsible lifestyle choices. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, this podcast might be just for you. So sit back, relax, and use what you were born with, empathy. Hello there, everyone. I am beyond excited for this podcast. And by the way, it's 5 years. So congratulations to every single one of you listeners that made this podcast possible. Thank you to the sponsor, which I'm going to be sharing later. I have not shared any sponsors in this podcast, but I have one sponsor in this podcast that I want you guys to see that I've been eating these foods for over 5 years, and I recommend to every single person I know. They've changed my lives, and they've been one of the best sponsors anyone could ask for. So definitely look out to that. And I'm beyond excited for the guest in today's episode. This is Sarah Lee. She's an animal communicator, and she is one of the most interesting people that you're going to meet. This is one of my favorite podcasts. It's so excited. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this one. And please comment down below wherever you're listening. Leave a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, and comment down below if you're listening to this on YouTube, because I'd love to hear what you guys think, and I love to hear how you guys enjoy this guest, because I think you're going to really love her and want to follow her everywhere. We're sitting here actually in Los Angeles, and we're here with this super special individual. Her name is Sarah, and she is a professional animal communicator and a Reiki practitioner in Los Angeles. Others refer to her as a pet psychic, an animal whisperer, or a behaviorist. So it's a super fascinating conversation that we're going to have that we have not had at all on this podcast. We haven't had anyone that's talking about our pets and the behavior of our pets. So I'm so excited to get into that. But before we jump right into that, what I want to ask you right now is the first question. So what was it like when you first had your viral TikTok? And I'm asking that because the first place that I encountered you was on TikTok. I saw you on TikTok and I was like, dang, she's really growing. She's really speaking up for the animals, but it was in a unique way. It wasn't quite like some of the other ones, and they're maybe making funny stuff. It was like informational stuff. And I was like, this is really good. So tell me a little bit about how you went viral and how that happened.
So the first video that went viral, as a vegan, I'm a huge advocate of health and, using plants to keep yourself healthy. And so I do a lot of like juices and detoxes and stuff like that.
Speaking of green juices and detoxes, let me tell you about the sponsor of today's podcast, Purium. These are the best, highest quality green juice. Let me tell you why Purium is different and why I think it is absolutely critical for everyone in today's world. First of all, if you go to the grocery store, the food quality is completely depleted by over 40 to 50% of the nutrients that it was over 30 to 50 years ago. There has been chemicals sprayed in the fields. There's also been monocropping. There's also been so many factors that go into the food system that make it not clean. So what I want to do today is tell you about Purium and what makes it different. These are completely chemical-free for 30 plus years. We're partnered with regenerative agriculture, with the cleanest farms, with zero additives and zero chemicals. It's so easy to make a green juice. You simply add the powder inside. You get a little blender, blend it up. It's incredibly delicious. It tastes great. I've been eating these foods from these farms for over 5 years, and this helped me in so many different ways. It tastes great. An incredible green smoothie that's going to leave you full, refreshed, making you energized, and has all of the B12, all of the vitamins and minerals that you need to fuel your day. Anyone that is my listener today, if you commit to a 90-day, I'm going to give you a blender. We're going to give you a transformation book. We're going to give you everything that you need to succeed, and you get a village of support so that you can successfully hit your goals. Whatever your goals are, we can help you to accomplish them. Every single other person that is listening, you can get the green juice. If you're like, hey, you know what? I don't want to commit to 90 days. That's too much. Get the green juice today. 50% off. Special discount with this podcast, Empathy, in the link down below. We're going to put it down below. The gift code is Empathy, and we're going to have everything that you need to get started today.
And I post about it in a funny way. Like, I think comedy is a great way to get people to watch and get the information. Anyways, I'd taken this video of me doing an oregano shot with my mother and grandmother. And it was like such a cute video. I didn't really know, like I just put it on because I think my gran is so cute. And then I just woke up the next day and everyone was like obsessing over my gran doing the shot. And that was really cool because I realized like anything that you find funny, there will be other people on there that find you funny, you know? And then I just went from there and like did similar stuff around like plant-based food, health, wellness, comedy, in that spectrum. And yeah.
What do you find to be like the most effective thing that you share that like really maybe is effective for your message, delivering your message? Because there's some that just go really good, but like it was just funny, but there wasn't a specific message to it. Have you found any that work really well and deliver your message at the same time?
It's a tough one because it's constantly changing. But yeah, I think appearance is a big part to play because you're accessing a greater community. Like it is the first thing that people notice. So there's definitely been ones where it's just like the way you look in a way, like, let's be honest. But also informational stuff, like where you can get vegan protein and using like the trending audio and stuff like that has been super effective. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So what got you to start at TikTok? How did that happen?
That's such a good question. I just heard about it and I have been so over Instagram for the longest time because it's so censored and you can be shadow banned, especially if you're talking about veganism. So when I heard that like TikTok is a platform that's not censored and you can't get shadow banned and things like that, and like there's so much more access, that's when I was like, okay, I'm going on TikTok because you can't like access people on Instagram anymore in this genre, you know. So and also the advertising, like Instagram, if you want to grow or make money off of Instagram, you have to invest money into advertising now and stuff. So there's like no opportunity for growth where TikTok isn't there yet. So it's super open.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that another thing that attracts people is that you can really connect with so many different people that don't know anything about your topic, and you are constantly learning. When I'm scrolling through videos, there are new things that I've never seen. The same thing's happening to other people. So
exactly.
When they're able to see something that's maybe related to veganism or animal rights or health, or, you know, they might not see these places if they're just looking on Instagram or if they're just looking on Snapchat. And so I think that that's a great place for them, and also a great place for the people that are sharing, because you want new people. Like, who wants to go and just talk to the same people over and over, or the same like-minded people? Like, you don't really grow if you're just always talking to the same type.
No, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So the next question I have for you is, what advice do you have for communicating better with your pets? What would be like some simple advice?
So that's a really good question. I think the most important thing is, first of all, recognizing that even though pets don't go to school to learn English, doesn't mean that there's no communication. 97% of communication is nonverbal. So it literally does not matter what language you're speaking. It's a concept that's put across. The exact same thing with a human being. If you don't know my words, you can still pick up on what I'm trying to communicate. It's the exact same thing with animals. So knowing that is true, you're 90% there. The other point that I would say is trusting yourself, trusting that you have that ability to have a concept in your mind and project it to your animal. They're looking at you for leadership, and that's why they look at you when you're going on walks, when you're at home, like all of those things. They're looking at you for guidance. So yeah, understanding that communication is nonverbal, that you can communicate with your animal, and then trusting that you can communicate with your animal is probably the best advice I can give.
All right. That's excellent. We'll definitely get into that more later. But I think there's some really good advice up front is great. So my next question for you is, how do you handle some vegan infighting? So lately I've noticed, and maybe not lately, but it's been going on where, you know, someone's like, oh, you're not vegan enough, or, oh, you're not doing that right, or, oh, you're using that, or you shouldn't say it this way, or, hey, that's not about the animals, so you shouldn't talk about that, or, hey, you know, what about this other injustice? You know, if you're vegan, you have to care about that injustice. There's a lot of this like stuff going on. How do you deal with that, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think that there is so many forms of activism, and none of us are God, none of us are perfect. And the fact that, you know, there are many, no offense, there are many unconscious people that are just believe that they're here to just like work a 9-to-5 job and make money and like die. That's their story, right? And that's cool. But the fact that there are people that are like, oh, I work really hard to earn money to survive, but then I also spend my time on this earth trying to make a difference or making a difference, that in itself is amazing. So whether it's about veganism, BLM, like whatever it is, the fact that you've chosen your time on earth to do that is incredible. And I think that we should acknowledge that first off. Second off, there are many forms of activism. And if you are vegan, you know, not everybody wants to be shouted at a Whole Foods. Not everybody wants to chain themselves to Whole Foods. But some of us get into bed at night and we're like, oh, I want to substitute the meat in my burrito. And they're Googling plant-based options. And then some people's amazing recipes on Instagram come up. That is activism. That is having somebody substitute a plant-based meat. That is activism. And so it's funny you say that, because I had recently a little tip on social media where somebody had basically said during the whole riot thing, somebody had said that all white vegans in LA are hypocrites because they condemn you for not going to protest for animals or to pig vigils, but none of them are at BLM protests. And a lot of people are saying that's not true. We've been here. And also I think to say all white vegans is separating us once again. Like during that week of the riots, like the last thing we needed was more separation. And actually so many people of color were saying that's not true. White people have been standing in front of us defending us. Not all white people, but what about the white people that are? Basically, in a nutshell, I had responded and said, look, of course, we can all be doing more as white people, 100%. I think many of us, not all of us, many of us can acknowledge that. But if you are going to spend your oxygen on anything, why not spend your oxygen on acknowledging the white vegans that are there instead of 2 random white vegans that aren't, you know? That, like, why do you want to separate us and why do you want to put yourself on a pedestal and make yourself the only white vegan that's there when it's not true? Basically, then I had asked somebody if I could attend. On this thread, I had said, hey, and are you going to the protest tomorrow? I would love to join you. And this person that had made this post saying that all white vegans are hypocrites responded to that and said, P.S., nobody wants to attend a protest with you. And, you know, I thought, first of all, that was very hurtful because I was like, whoa, am I such a bad person that somebody would say something like that? But second of all, here's a white female vegan saying all white vegans are hypocrites. Then a white female vegan asks, can I attend a protest? And you say nobody wants to attend a protest with you. That is such vegan infighting and it's so hypocritical. So what is your message? And there's a lot of that happens. So for the most part, I just ignore it. But there are some times where it's like, this is bullshit. You know, we should be coming together. But for the most part, like, and I said, like, there are so many forms of activism. Like, some people are working all the time. They can't attend protests 24/7, but they can donate a shitload of money, like I did, you know. So never just judge a book by its cover. If I'm not at a pig vigil every Sunday, it doesn't mean that I'm not doing anything. The fact that I'm choosing a plant-based meal every day is activism enough, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a challenging time because there are so many different things going on, and sometimes something gets, you know, put under the magnifying glass, you know, really heavily, and everyone says now's the time, you know, we got to go now, you know, right now, but not everyone can go right now at the drop of a hat, you know, for everything that's happening, you know, especially the ones that are already putting the time, like you say, they're working their full-time job and they already have, like, you know, full to the brim of everything else, you know, of whatever else they already have going on, adding on to those layers, you know, it is sometimes tough and it is sometimes challenging. And the fact that, you know, we do have the ability to acknowledge, you know, the good things that are happening. Totally. And focusing on those good things is always so easy. You know, when I used to work in my old job, I used to always tell people it's so easy to point out all the things that are wrong. I could say, that's wrong, this is wrong, fix this, fix that. And I said, but that's not going to help you or teach you or anything. focus on what's good and what's going right is I think the best method. And I think that you talk about that when you're talking about, training a dog. And I'm not comparing people to dogs or anything.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, with reinforcement. And also, like, especially with social media and how everybody has differing opinions, things aren't always as they seem. So, I mean, we've seen that in mainstream media. Things are never as they seem, first of all. So let's not jump to conclusions ever. First, find out the information. But also, can you imagine the morale if people started using their platform to say, oh my God, look at all of these people of different colors coming together, instead of being like, there are, like, why do you want to separate us? And activism, like, what is activism? It's doing something to make something better, right? So why would you if you are an activist, why would you use your platform to continue to criticize? That's not making it better, especially when you're criticizing the people that are in the same line of activism as you. Yeah.
So how do you help it, and how do you solve it? Like, how do you deal with it? Like, that happens, and then how do you move forward? Is it something I block this person and I move forward and I put it in the back of my mind? I help educate this person. And then there's always the question of, do I have time for this? Sometimes it's like you're flooded. And some people that don't get flooded with messages don't understand. Flooded with messages is like, you literally physically can't read them all if you tried. Like, if you sat down and did nothing all day, you didn't eat, you didn't drink, you didn't sleep, you still couldn't answer all the comments.
I wish that people could, some of our requests, like, it takes forever to go through it, and I'm grateful for it. But we're only human. And I think there's an opportunity to have a conversation, which I try to do in that instance. But sometimes there's just, like, no room for conversation. At that point, you have to move on. And also, I think realizing, like, in every activist community, everybody has an ego. And so some people are doing it in order to feed their own ego or their own narrative or whatever it is. And some people are doing it selflessly. And so I would just say that liken yourself to the people that you aspire to be like or want to be around more. Like, you can't control everybody else. But I would say be very aware of, like, the opinions that you're sharing. And for me included, like, I also have to double think about everything that I post, because it could come off as ignorant. I think it's all a choice, what you invest your time in.
Yeah, and that choice is tough sometimes. And what I fear is sometimes I influence people to go onto TikTok. I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have, some people that have followed you from other, places, or knew you from other places and saw your success and were like, hey, I want that success too. Let me go over there as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes I talk to them and I interact, and I notice that they're going through maybe a hard time. Sometimes they're going through a hard time of, hey, I'm not growing fast enough. Or sometimes they're going through a hard time of, man, I get so much hate, or sometimes they're, and what I fear the most is that shuts them down, like the behavior of the individual that they're encountering with, like your situation, that could shut the person down, right? Everyone's different, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe someone else deals with that and they say, oh, I don't want to do activism for a week now, because I'm pretty upset about what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of one of the things that I fear.
Yeah.
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 Because then I think the animals lose. That's the only ones that lose, and that's what, like, I interviewed Peace by Vegan. I interviewed him, and one of the things that he said is that every time he makes a decision, anytime it's an activist decision, he says, is this in the best interest of the animal?
Yeah.
Before he makes the decision. If it's yes, he goes forward. He doesn't even think about it. If it's no, then he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's
a really good way of looking at it, because it can be tough.
Yeah.
There's so many different layers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so tell us a little bit about you.
So I am an animal communicator, and what that means is some people refer to me as a pet psychic, or like a dog whisperer, and that term, even though that is pretty much what it is, I try to stay away from that term because it sounds like very like wishy-washy, oh, she must be a witch, and that's not what it is at all. It really is animal psychology, and what it is understanding life and the experience from the animal's perspective, and where they've come from, the trauma, how they work through the trauma, and then how I can find solutions for them to have a more harmonious experience in the home with their owners. So a lot of it is working with animals that have been abused, rescue animals, trying to, the same way that you would have if you had a dog that was adopted. or rescued, and they were severely abused when they were young. Or if you had a child that was severely abused and then you adopt them or foster them. And knowing that they have experienced trauma, how do they now perceive their new reality or their home based off of their trauma and their past experiences, and then moving on from there? So yeah, that is exactly what I do with animals.
So how would you say that relates to animals that you eat? Because sometimes people have a disconnection between the animals in their home and the animals in their plate. And more people are connecting to the animals on their plate and the animals in their home and not seeing a difference. So how do you think that role and what you've learned played into not eating animals?
So it's very clear to me that all animals, whether dog, pig, cow, whatever, all have sentience. We all know that every single animal has the capacity to have a maternal instinct, a paternal instinct, to experience fear, to experience love, to experience joy. So knowing that, we now acknowledge that they are sentient beings. We can prove that across the board, whatever animal it is. So knowing that a cow can experience the same fear that a dog can experience, that is, for me, all I need to know. Yeah, I don't know, like, how to even...
And so at one point did that lead? Did you see maybe a connection to the food that you eat?
Yeah.
At what point did that happen?
Yeah, so I grew up around a lot of animals, and I was rescuing animals, rehabilitating animals, and I was very aware of, how this horse perceived the world and whatever. And I would be spending my days with these animals, helping them have a better experience. But then I would go home and drink milk and have an ostrich steak, which is like what people in South Africa eat. And I always thought that eating animals was quite strange. Like, I didn't really enjoy it, and I thought it was weird. But then at some point, I felt like it was very hypocritical. Everybody knew me as this girl that loved animals. But no one realized like how hypocritical it was to say I loved animals, but then I would also eat them. Like, that to me is very strange. So it was like, but at the time, I mean, I was only probably like 10 or 12 years old. I didn't know what veganism was. You never heard that word in South Africa. I lived in like a farm in South Africa for a while. Like, nobody would have ever said that word. But when I heard the word vegan, I was like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. And also, you're never educated on what happens in the dairy industry, by the way, or the egg industry or whatever. But having access to that information, I was like, oh my God, I cannot consume this stuff. And then especially with what I do professionally, how am I supposed to access and work with the feelings and the sentience of animals on an energetic level if I'm consuming? It makes no sense. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to go vegan. And I haven't eaten meat in like 11 years, but I went vegan probably like 6 years ago. It was honestly the best decision I ever made. It like raises, honestly, it sounds hippie, but eating low vibrational food like dairy and meat, it literally is dead matter. That is dead matter. It is a low vibrational food. That is a scientific thing.
And it's been dead for a while. Some of the meat that people eat has been frozen for like months and months.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you are consuming dead matter. It does not have energy. And that is not a hippie perspective. That is now a scientific perspective. So when you stop consuming low vibrational foods and you're consuming foods that have a higher vibration, or high frequency that actually give you energy, your experience is just so different. The way that you perceive the world, the way that you feel is so different. You're literally consuming energy. We are energetic beings. We have to eat to have energy for the day. Like, that's what that is. So why would I eat something dead? And then also, like the ingredients in that stuff can make you so sick. I mean, I had such hormonal imbalances, acne. I could not stop gaining weight. I was moody. The minute I cut all of that stuff out, I never had an issue again. So it was completely a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at what point did you say, because I know everyone's journey is different. Some people go, hey, I went vegan for me. This is just for me. Like when I went vegan, it was just for my health. I didn't really care about the animals at the time. I cared enough to be like, I'm definitely not harming them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really standing up for them, so to speak, until for me personally, 6 months later. So at what point did you start getting maybe active? We were like, I want to communicate this to people and I want to share this to people.
Yeah. I mean, I think naturally for me, I had been doing that since I was young anyway. So I always felt like this compelled sense to like really shout at people that were mistreating animals. Like that was what happened as a child. I had a huge issue in high school where I was like defending this bearded dragon, and like I have got in so much trouble for it, and like, you know, like that has never been an issue for me. And from a young age I was aware, and the health thing came afterwards. I didn't go vegan for my health. I went vegan for the animals. But then like a couple of weeks in, I was like, oh, whoa, I was not expecting to feel this way, you know? But it's interesting. There's been people that have come into my life that were complete meat eaters and then found out, like, watched What the Health, and they were like, oh my gosh, I have to go vegan. Like, I'm going to feel so good. I'm going to look so good. Went vegan for the health. And then, like you said, a couple months later, they're like, I can't believe that they do that to mother cows. Like, I'm going to defend them till I die. You know, it's something, I think, energetically that you start receiving this information and like literally vibing with it. You're like, oh my gosh, I cannot ignore this.
Yeah. So what would you say are some of the ways that you are speaking up for animals now in your day-to-day life?
Yeah. So I think teaching people that animals experience and process trauma the exact same way we do is a big eye-opener. People don't really think about that. People don't think, okay, my dog was abused as a child by the man in the house. So now this dog has a perception of a paternal figure in the home the way that a child would. Why do you take an abused child to a psychologist? For the psychologist to understand the psyche and how they perceive the world now. Exact same thing with dogs. So that's a huge thing for people to realize, like, oh my gosh, I actually have to look at it from such a psychological and emotional standpoint, because that's literally what it is. And once you can't unsee that. Once you understand that, like, my dog is processing trauma the way that a child would, people start thinking of animals in a different way. And then also on my Instagram, like, I get to talk about the experiences of these dogs and whatever animal, and then talking about the feelings and the perspectives and how they perceive their home and the dynamics and the mother and the father, and that all animals have different experiences. Then also the way that animals pass and the process of passing. That is a lot of activism. And then also attending when I can, obviously not now with COVID, but attending, you know, different protests, pig vigils is a huge thing. Anybody that wants to deepen their activism needs to attend a pig vigil or a cow vigil or a chicken vigil, any vigil. You can never unsee that.
Yeah, and for those that maybe aren't aware of a vigil, but a vigil is basically a place where you will bear witness to the animals before they go into a slaughterhouse. So what happens is when you see meat or dairy or eggs on TV, there's a lot of parts that are cut out. But then there's other parts that are like aren't even really filmed either, like that just like aren't filmed, right? And that process of like in the truck to the slaughterhouse is the part that is just not filmed. Like, how could you film that? So activists will go out and film that and share some remorse and share some compassion for the first time in these animals' lives. So for people that don't know what vigils are, often they get water, but it's a time to kind of, you know, say sorry and you know, and say goodbye before they
and I mean, let's, like, for example, a pig vigil. These pigs travel, like, how many are in a truck? Like hundreds, right? Sometimes there's 3 levels, okay? Metal trucks. There is no bedding on the floor. There's no water, nothing. They travel in these metal trucks from further than Palm Springs. They can travel hours and hours in the sweltering heat. The minute that they arrive at the slaughterhouse, so for example, Farmer John's slaughterhouse slaughters 10,000, a minimum of 10,000 pigs a day. Okay, it used to be 8,000, it's now 10,000. So there's 10,000 pigs arriving a day, Monday to Friday. So that's 50,000. They've been traveling. The minute they get there, they are sunburnt, they have blisters. These animals are covered in abscess, cancer, all types of things, you name it. They have urine. They have not blood, received water. They've never received wounds. Love, you know, a product. And then, that part they don't see. And by the way, just a small tidbit, even if they are, raised humanely or grass-fed or whatever it is, they're not slaughtered in the farm that they are raised. They are slaughtered at the same slaughterhouse as every other pig. So let's not forget that. It's very important. Humane slaughter, there's no such thing. These pigs are now gassed for the most part at Farmer John's. It's the largest slaughterhouse in California, I think, actually. So now these pigs have never received, love or acknowledgement. So here we are, and I was very scared to go the first time. It took me a long time because I was like, what am I going to... Because we are both sentient beings, the pig and the human being have a capacity for sentience, right? So here I am offering you water and showing you love. You see, like I want to cry every time I talk about it. You see, even the most unspiritual person can see the change in this animal. What is going on in their eyes, their eye contact, what they're saying. It will change you forever. And you realize, oh my God, that small act of kindness makes the world of difference. The world of difference. And that's why you keep going back, because you know that it makes it. And then they're trucked in and you hear them like screaming. You hear, it's a mess. But knowing that little act of kindness made such a difference is so worth it. And then, as harsh as it is, I don't want to like say that I'm like God or anything. I'm like very far away from being anything close to God. But based on the work that I do with animals that pass, it is extremely beautiful where they go. What they show me, it is the most, it is literally the definition of bliss. So knowing that they have to go through this extreme pain, but once they pass, they're actually like so lucky. Like sometimes I think I wish that it was me, because it's so beautiful where they go, that they are released from this pain, So that's what I try and focus on. A lot of people, and it is hard. Like there's many times that I've sat on that curb and just cried, like, what the hell is this world? But you have to remember that that pain doesn't last forever, that they do go somewhere beautiful, and your presence has made such a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes those are the moments that change you, and the moments that tell you, like, you know what, I'm never going to go back. I mean, my first situation like that, where it was like, I mean, I already knew at that point, but like it just re-solidified it, was I went inside a slaughterhouse in Bali and filmed pig slaughter and cow slaughter, and seeing the fear in their eyes and the pain and the direct torture that they're going through. And they were animals. The cows were halal, right? So that's the highest standard, right? And they were treated better than the pigs, for sure. You know what I mean? They were both killed, absolutely. And people in the West think halal's the worst. Halal's actually better. It's in a way, you know what I mean? Of two evils. You have two evils, you know what I mean? And so I witnessed that. And then the pigs was a different story. They were directly tortured, and I mean, like, intentionally. And these were also, they were organic and free range pigs. And so that was the place of the killing. So that was the slaughterhouse floor.
And let's not lose perspective. A lot of people think like, oh, well, that other countries have different standards. That happens in Bali. That's disgusting. No, it happens in every single continent. This is legal. There are legalities for slaughter that are the same in every single continent. And mind you, it is worse in the United States of America.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, it's illegal to film in the factory farms. It's really hard to get that footage.
Yeah, it's really
inside the U.S. Yeah, so what I want to talk about now is a little bit more about the behaviors of the pets,
right?
And the direct impact that you have on people, as well as some of the advice that you give.
Yeah, so it always changes. Some people will come to me and say, I rescued this dog and he was severely abused and he reacts so differently to this. So then it's my job to go in, and either they've given me that information. So like how you would with a psychologist, the psychologist gets the backstory and tries to understand, and then derives an opinion or formulates something around that information. Sometimes these people have no information at all. So then at that point, it's now my job intuitively or instinctually to go in and try and understand that. And yeah, I think just understanding, psychology and behavior, and positive reinforcement and fear and all of those things. If you have a dog that is barking and doesn't let anybody in the home, instead of disciplining them or something like that, you can do positive reinforcement and show them a better option. Like, it's just all positive reinforcement and psychology and understanding how you can change the mind of something after you've understood where those belief systems stem from. It's like sometimes super complicated to like somebody that doesn't do this every day, but at the same time, it's also super simple. Like, I think we can all acknowledge and say like, oh, I understand why he has that perspective. But we're never taught to look at things that way with animals. So my job is really, I would rather equip my clients with that ability and that understanding so they don't have to call me again. I would rather that nobody called me every day and said, oh, no, I can. But my job really is for the person to understand. But then also, it always ends up also being about the person. You know, the animals are mirrors of us, really, for the most part. Yes, they have their own life and their own thing. I don't believe that animals are here for us, but they are a direct reflection of what's happening in the home. So it always ends up being like a psychology session for the human too.
What are some common mistakes that maybe people make in the home with their pets that you see?
The biggest thing that I wish people would understand is the power of their words. People will like tease their dogs and they think it's like funny, and it's not funny at all because you don't realize the concept that you're putting across. You know, I had a client that called me and she was like, you know, I rescued these 2 pit bulls. The one's a boy, one's a girl. And the boy is like so strong physically, but he is like so weak and he's so shy and he's so timid and like he doesn't have any confidence, whatever. So I go there and I'm like, oh my gosh, like why does this dog, I like wrote it down and I said like, this dog almost feels like he's not a man. He has no manhood. What is that about? Why does he feel like his sister is more of a man? And she was like, oh my God, that's so funny. I tell him that all the time. I tell him that the sister is more of the man in the house. Now, would you, if you were a parent and you had a son and a daughter, would you tell the son, oh, I don't want to use bad language, but like, would you tell the son like, oh, you're such a girl. Your sister's stronger than you. Your sister can fight off men more than you can. Like, what is that son going to think of himself? His mother's telling him that he's a girl, you know, and not to get into, you know, the whole like terms of men, like, you know, but emasculating men is the same thing as emasculating a male dog. They are men. They have a perception of themselves as a man. That's why they want to dominate. That's why, you know, they have testosterone, all of these things. So the most important thing is the power of your words and always having positive reinforcement and showing the difference between good and bad, but never would say to your animal what you would say to a child, you know.
Have you seen any maybe mistakes that people do, like maybe they think their dog is being bad and maybe do some kind of punishment that is incorrect?
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that it's never the animal's fault. It's the person's fault and the way that they've raised the animal. Now, of course, if you've newly rescued an animal and they have these really bad habits and behavioral habits and they're aggressive and whatever, of course, at that point, it's still not the animal's fault because they've come from a situation that's made them like that. So that's very important to know. But it's your job now to take that time to rewire this animal and show them the difference between good and bad. The only time that I would use like physical force, if any, is if a dog snaps at a person's face, right? Now, even then, it's still the person's fault because why? A dog doesn't just, for the most part, unless you haven't rewired their behavior, a dog doesn't just snap at a person. They have been instigated. So, for example, let me give an example. Like, for example, I have family friends that the little girl kept on picking up my dog, Almond, kept on picking him up. Now, Almond, we all have a personal boundary. Like, if someone just kept on touching me, I promise you I would lose my... We all have, like, a personal bubble. We all have boundaries. And that's the other thing is, like, as setting boundaries with the animals so they know that they are okay, too, and safe. Kept on picking up Almond, and I could see that Almond was, like, not comfortable, and then he started growling. Like, that is his way of communicating, I do not like this. 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 And I said, you got to stop picking up Almond because one day he's going to... Do you hear him growling? He does not like it. He does not like it. And then eventually, after like this happening so many times, he eventually lost it and he like bounced at her and snapped at her. Luckily, he didn't bite her, like actually grab her face. But it actually wasn't his fault. It was the behavior and what she was doing to him, you know. But still, I did like just tap him on the bum, because even though it was so frustrating for him, we can never let it get to that point, for his safety too, and the safety of the child, you know. But knowing that it's actually, if your dog behaves badly, it's actually your fault, not the dog's.
Yeah, so currently people will reach out to you and they'll seek out your advice, and then you have consultations with them and work with them.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all different.
And what kind of places in the world are you interacting with people?
You know, it's so funny. I think because of social media, I have people all over the world. So it can get challenging because of time differences and stuff. But yeah, it's interesting where there's countries like Kuwait. Like, I would have never imagined that I would have from there that acknowledged the sentience of animals, you know.
There's a community. I lived in Kuwait for 2 years.
That's crazy.
And there's I have videos on my YouTube of a picnic we had with 80 of us.
That's amazing.
There's like 80 vegans in Kuwait.
That's
like,
amazing.
It's a big picnic. It's really
cool. You don't realize that, like, you know. So yeah, it's all over the world. All over the world.
That's so cool.
But obviously the clients that I go to in person are in America, you know.
yeah, of course. So is there anything else that maybe you want to share, or maybe something that you don't want people to forget from?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people that go vegan, it's more motivational to go vegan for their health. Like, yes, it's very nice to say I love animals and I want to protect them, but it's more motivational to know, oh, I'm going to feel good after this. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to like look better, whatever it is, you know? So what I would say is like thinking of that and think why you should choose a whole food plant-based diet over a meat or dairy diet. And a lot of people will not agree with this, but I once watched this video where this guy had like put this kidney bean in soil in like a glass and he'd filmed the process, and the kidney bean like grew a little sprout and then a root and grew the stem and grew these beautiful leaves and then grew this flower, and it was like this whole thing, all of that information and energy from that one bean. Now, energetically and from a spiritual standpoint, I can't slice off a slither of beef and put it in the ground and all of this energy and information will just sprout and give me more life. You literally do not get life from dead matter. So know that when you're consuming this meat that takes at least 7 days to get through your system, know that you're not giving yourself life. If you want to experience life and feel vibrant, you need to consume vibrant foods. And you will not feel sorry for doing that. You will be so glad that you made that change.
Yeah, absolutely. So how can people maybe, if someone's inspired to do something that you're doing or something similar, how could they do it?
In terms of animal communication?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me. I'm actually about to put out a course that people can purchase and do it on their own. And then they have a bonus call with me in coaching.
Speaking of coaching, I am now offering to every single one of my listeners a special one-on-one, free, completely, no charge, free consultation about your health to help you get to the next level so that you can be feeling, looking, and performing your absolute best. I'm going to be taking the knowledge that I've learned from this podcast, over 5 years of experts just like this, just like all the other experts that you see on this podcast, and I'm going to have a community, a village, recipe books, everything that you need, all the support. I'm going to leave my calendar down below so you can book a free consultation with me, and you could fill out the questions, answer the questions, and I'm going to do special one-on-ones with any one of you that want to have this opportunity with you and get a chance to meet with me one-on-one, get a chance to level up your health, feel better, perform your best, and just get a chance to really take control of your life. And I know what it's like. If you've seen my story, I've been there before. I was fat, sick, and nearly dead, autoimmune disease, and I've completely shifted my life because of this podcast. So that's what I want for you. So absolutely click that down below and do not miss it, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
But also, researching it. Like, I have really informational stuff on my Instagram TV. And I do a lot of lives talking about it, and research it for yourself. And I would also look into the different energy centers in the body and the difference in a human being and an animal. Not only does it talk about energy, but it talks about like how emotions sit in the body, in human beings and animals alike. And just starting to familiarize yourself with that.
So is this something that someone needs to go to specific schooling for? It's something I can research, develop, and create my own thing if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, there are people, for example, I think I would still, if I hadn't done all of these courses, I have done a bunch of courses and whatever, I would still be in the exact same place that I am, to be honest. But there are some people that are born just like being able to feel what's going on, or be able to like get these concepts of things or understand like what's going on without having a conversation. But then there's other people that go and do these courses and do their research and hone the skill and get to the same place. So it really depends. But I would suggest doing courses, or at least getting a coach. Like I do coach a lot of people. Like we have one-on-ones and we work on, because also intuition it can be different. You can get it through sight, sound, smell, touch, the concepts of things. And then you get to hone, because there's also different symbolism. And then also from a medical standpoint, understanding like, oh, they're having an issue in their stomach. Well, what emotions are seated in the stomach? Things like that. So I would definitely suggest doing a Reiki course, or just studying about energy and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where can people find you and if they want to find you?
So on Instagram, you can find me at the Sarah Lee, TheSarahLea. And then on TikTok, you can find me at the Veggie Barbie, TheVeggieBarbie. And the Veggie Barbie I like to keep lighthearted. I think like my Instagram is kind of serious and it's more to the point. But I think there's another side to veganism that's activism too. Just like looking healthy and showing all the different human like fruits and veggies and things like that, and having fun with it and connecting with different people. So yeah, depends what you're looking for. If you want to really hone the skill on animal communication, go to my Instagram. If you want to just have fun and learn about plant-based food and consuming a vibrant diet and feeling better and enjoying your life more, follow me on the Veggie Barbie.
Yeah, it's so funny how TikTok is actually fun. Like I used to be so stressed out. I had to be doing active, seeing slaughterhouse footage over and over, and just thinking like, man, this is depressing the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And finding TikTok was almost like, it helped a lot, because it's fun and it's funny.
Totally.
And it's creative and it's unique.
And it doesn't always have to be like, life doesn't always have to be so serious. Yes, is it important for people to learn what happens in the dairy industry? 100%. But I think a larger group of people would choose a plant-based meal based off of the way that a person looks, let's be honest, versus a smaller group of people that had the courage to now go and watch a video of the dairy industry and then choose a plant-based meal. Like, it just is unfortunate, but the world that we live in is very superficial. And why do we choose to buy certain clothes? Why do we spend so much money on sneakers? It looked so good on this person. I want to be like that. That's just how the world works. So that's why TikTok is great. That is activism. It's just different.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
It's just different.
And comedy brings so many people together. Like, I get to laugh. Like, people troll me all the time, but I laugh with it.
It's hard for them to make fun of you when you already made fun of yourself.
100%.
When you already, like, I like one where I'm like,
yeah.
Like, how are you going to make fun of me?
No, exactly.
It's kind of funny.
I love that video. It's so funny.
I choose life.
It's the best. I love that audio too.
That was so funny. Yeah.
So funny.
Some of those ones are so creative, and then like you always like want like recently I was doing ones where like I'll create like the soundbite, and I'll be like, what can I use this for now?
Totally.
So like I'll just create. I'm like, I like that sound. It's funny, and I'm like, how how do I use it? I already recorded it. It's so funny.
Or like that, that audio, Dumb Ways to Die?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I used that, and I was like, me when people eat meat and dairy, and I was like singing that song. So many people loved it, like so many people shared it, but so many people hated it at the same time. But it was like creative and funny and goofy, and it got the conversations.
That's what I was telling people. I said, look, like whatever happens in the videos, like kind of whatever. Like really, it's like if it gets conversations going, well, now it starts. Like that's when it starts. No, exactly. Like whatever your perception, if you started a comment, well, great. Like that's kind of the goal.
That is activism.
I started a conversation. All right. Well, I had a great time. And I can't wait for people to see this.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're welcome as well. And you guys will be seeing this one soon. Of course, it's on YouTube and everywhere you can find podcast. And so keep on watching, guys. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Please, please, please make sure that you guys share this with anyone that you think will find this interesting. And also make sure that you guys are subscribed, because I can see a lot of you guys are listening, but you aren't subscribed.